Chapter 13. The next morning, the rain stopped, but the mist hung on. I was beginning to think Mom hadn't exaggerated the lake's bad weather, or the hordes of mosquitoes and gnats that seemed immune to bug sprays. When I came downstairs, I saw Dulce staring out the window at the water. After a while, she said, "I'd better get back to work." She cleaned up most of the mess and discovered that the paintings weren't as badly damaged as she'd thought. Except for the ones she smeared with black paint, she managed to clean them. After she left, I sat at the table and enjoyed a cup of coffee with plenty of sugar and cream. Mom never let me drink it at home, but Dulce had said caffeine wouldn't hurt me. She lived on it herself. Emma was still sleeping. She'd been awake all night with bad dreams, but she wouldn't tell Dulce what they were about. I was pretty sure Sissy's story had inspired her nightmares. I dreamed about Theresa myself. This time I thought the girls in the canoe were Mom and Dulce, but I wasn't sure. I still couldn't see anyone's face clearly. Between the sighing of the wind and the dark day, I felt lonely and sad. In an effort to escape my mood, I opened To Kill a Mockingbird. I was more than halfway through, but I hadn't read much before I fell asleep with my head on the open book. The sound of the back door opening woke me up. I turned and saw Sissy standing a couple of feet away. She was still wearing Emma's red sweatshirt. "What are you doing here?" I didn't bother to hide my annoyance. "Emma's asleep, and even if she was wide awake, I wouldn't let you near her." "I didn't come to see Emma. I came to see you." "Why?" She twirled the sweatshirt's hood's drawstrings. "I didn't have anything else to do." "Well, I have plenty to do." "Like what?" "Like read this book, for one thing." Sissy craned her neck to see the title. To Kill a Mockingbird? I never read that. Is it good? Determined to ignore her, I held the book in front of my face and tried to read. "I guess you're mad about what I said yesterday," she mumbled. I lowered the book. "Why did you tell Emma those stories? She had bad dreams all night. That's why she's still asleep." "She shouldn't be such a fraidy cat," Sissy said. "I was just kidding around." "That's what you said when you almost drowned her." Sissy shrugged. "I guess I'm the only one around here with a sense of humor." "If you think that kind of stuff is funny, you're sick." She laughed. "Huh. At least I don't read books about bird killers. That's pretty sick if you ask me." "You are so ignorant," I said in a nasty voice. To Kill a Mockingbird isn't about bird killers." Sissy sat down at the table across from me. "What's it about, then?" "I haven't finished reading it yet, have I?" I marked my place and laid the book down. "It's required summer reading for 8th grade. I have to pass a test and write an essay on it when school starts." "Big deal. I hate school. I'm glad I don't have to go anymore." I wonder if some of you are thinking that right now. Hope not. "What do you mean? You're too young to quit school." "I mean for the summer, stupid. I'm on vacation like everybody, including you." Sissy tilted her chair back so far I was sure she'd fall on her head any second. Not that I cared. Maybe she'd leave if she hurt herself. "How's Dulce this morning?" she asked. "Are her paintings ruined?" "Why should you care?" Sissy rocked back and forth on her chair's legs as if she were trying to figure out how far she could go without tipping over. I wish I could have seen her face when she found that mess. I would have laughed and laughed. "It was you." Sure, I was right. I glared at Sissy. "You wrecked the studio, didn't you? And then you made up all that stuff about Theresa." "You're crazy," Sissy said. "Why would I do something like that?" "Because you're a spiteful little brat." At that point, Sissy finally overbalanced the chair and crashed to the floor. She made such a loud noise I jumped up, scared my wish had come true and she'd really hurt herself. "Are you okay?" She rubbed the back of her head and threw my own words back at me. "Why should you care?" Without waiting for an answer, she went to the back door. "I'm going for a walk. You can come if you like." I stared at her in disbelief. "What makes you think I'd go anywhere with you?" "I want to show you something." Sissy gave me one of her sly smiles. "I guarantee you won't be sorry." When I hesitated, she added, "You're always asking me questions. Where do I live? What's my last name? Personal stuff like that. If you really want to know, come with me. Maybe I'll tell you." Maybe you will, I thought. Probably you won't. Giving in to curiosity, I glanced at the kitchen clock. 9 o'clock. Emma would sleep for at least another hour. I can't go far, I said. Emma will be worried if she wakes up and nobody's home. Plus, you don't want to get in trouble with your crazy aunt, Sissy added. With a shrug, I let her lead me outside and into the pine woods. We walked single file along a narrow path that wound around trees, roots, and mossy boulders bearded with ferns. Mosquitoes hummed in my ears, and gnats circled my head. Except for the cries of gulls and crows, it was very quiet. Where are we going? I asked. To a place I know. We came out of the woods on a hill above the lake. Down below, the water lay still and calm, as gray as the sky above it. Sissy walked to the end of a rocky overhang and dropped to her knees, right on the edge. What I want to show you is down there, she pointed at the lake. You better come back. You might fall. I spoke loudly so she wouldn't guess I was afraid of high places. A gust of wind circled through her hair and lifted the hood of her sweatshirt. Fraidy cat! She leaned farther out, crouched like a gargoyle on the rock. I'm the only one who knows what's down there. Oh, sure. Sick of her grin, sick of her show-off personality, sick of everything about her, even her bathing suit. I backed away from her in the scary place she'd led me. I thought you wanted me to tell you my secrets, she taunted in a sing-song voice. Sissy, sissy, where do you live? What's your mommy like? What's your daddy like? What's your last name? Oh, sissy, sissy, tell me your secrets. I put more distance between us. I'm going home. Emma's probably awake now. She'll wonder where I am. You're as big as a baby as she is. Sissy got to her feet and walked toward me. Are you scared I'm going to push you off the cliff? She lunged at me as if she really meant to do it. When I jumped back, she laughed. Baby, baby, baby. Go away, I yelled at her. I never want to see you again. She met my eyes dead on, giving me the full benefit of the cold stare she was so good at. The wind toyed with her hair, whipping pale strands across her tanned face. You can't get rid of me, even if you try. With a laugh, Sissy shoved me aside and darted off into the rain. So long, she called. Goodbye, ta-ta, adieu. I watched her for a few moments and then I followed her. If she wouldn't tell me where she lived, I'd find out myself. I'd go right up to her door and tell her mother that Sissy wasn't welcome at Gold Cottage anymore. As little and skinny as she was, Sissy was fast. I couldn't keep her in sight. Try hard as I could, just as I was about to give up, I glimpsed her, far ahead, disappearing into a grove of tall pines. By the time I reached the shelter of the trees, the rain was pouring down and Sissy had disappeared. I looked around, bewildered. Where had she gone? There was nothing here. Just pines and tall grass and tangles of wild roses, and vines growing over outcrops of mossy stones. When I heard a car whoosh past, I ran through the pine to a road. On the other side, I saw a small yellow house with blue shutters and a curl of smoke coming from its chimney. A rock garden and beds of flowers bloomed across the porch, their colors brightening the gloom. I ran across and knocked on the door. Sure, I'd found Sissy's home. She'd be surprised to see me on her doorstep for a change. Inside, a dog began barking, and someone said, Hush, Chauncey. The door opened and a woman peered at me. Yes? Is Sissy home? I asked. The dog kept barking. He was large and brown and had a plumy tail, but he didn't look especially fierce, just noisy. Is Sissy home? I asked. Sissy? The woman shook her head, puzzled. I don't know anyone by that name. Turning back to the dog, she said, Be quiet! Chauncey regarded her with mournful eyes and lay down, head on his paws, as if he were ashamed of himself. His tail thumped the floor. That's better, the woman told him, and his tail thumped harder. Now, she said to me, you'd better come in and dry off. You're soaked. I hesitated a second, but I was cold, drenched, and worn out from chasing Sissy. The woman had a friendly look, and the dog was quite sweet now that he'd stopped barking. Ooh. The room behind the open door looked warm and cozy and dry. My name's Kathy Trent, the woman said, but I don't believe I know you. I'm Allie O'Dwyer. I'm staying with my Aunt Dulce at Gold Cottage. She nodded. Janine Donaldson told me Dulce was back. Do you know my aunt? I haven't seen her since she was about your age. Maybe younger." She looked at me closely. "You're shivering. Let's get you dried off before you catch pneumonia." I followed Miss Trent to the bathroom. Handing me a towel, she said, "There's a robe on the back of the door. Put that on, and I'll toss your clothes in the dryer. Then you can tell me all about yourself and Dulce and Claire, too." Soon I was bundled up in a fluffy bathrobe, sitting near a small wood stove and sipping hot tea. Chauncey dozed near my feet, and Mrs. Trent sat across from me in a rocking chair. She wore her gray hair in a long braid down her back, but her face was unlined and rosy. Her jeans were faded, and her gray sweatshirt was several sizes too big. However, I could tell she was as slim as Dulce, even though she was older. She regarded me over the rim of her teacup. "No one here thought Dulce or Claire would ever come back to the lake." "Here we go again," I thought. Aloud I said, "I guess Miss Donaldson told you she came to see Dulce." Miss Trent nodded and waited for me to go on. "Dulce didn't remember her, but she was friendly at first. Then Mrs. Donaldson mentioned Theresa, and Dulce got upset. She said she didn't remember her either and went off in a huff." I tied the robe's belt tighter. "It was really embarrassing," I went on, "but Mrs. Donaldson was very nice about it. She even apologized for upsetting Dulce." "Janine's a sweet person," Miss Trent said. "Unlike Dulce," I added silently. "Miss Donaldson knew Theresa. Did you know her too?" I asked. "Yes, I did." Miss Trent took a sip of tea. "I have to say it, but I hate to say it, but her older sister Linda and I spent a lot of time running away from that poor kid. Theresa wanted to tag along everywhere we went, but she was just 5 or 6 years younger. A big difference when you're a teenager and your little sister is 10. If we left her out, she'd tattle on Linda just to get her in trouble." She leaned back in the rocking chair and watched the rain run down in the window panes. "It's an awful thing to say, but I don't think anyone liked Theresa, kids or adults. She was just too difficult, always mad about something. From what Janine says, she'd caused so much trouble between Dulce and Claire that your grandmother used to send her home." She sighed. "After what happened, I've often wished I'd been nicer to her. She couldn't have been very happy." For a while we sat quietly. I thought about Caroline Hogan. In 3rd grade, everybody hated her. I don't remember why now. Then she got hit by a car. She didn't die or anything, but when I saw her on crutches, I felt terrible. If something bad happened to Sissy, I guess I'd feel the same way. Maybe I'd try to be nicer next time I saw her. Maybe. As I sipped my tea, I stared at the quilt hanging on the wall across from me. It was done in shades of blues and grays ranging from dark to light, and its pattern swirled like water. The quilt had a melancholy feeling, sad beyond words. It reminded me of Dulce's lake paintings. Miss Trent turned to see what I was looking at. "That's my interpretation of the lake," she said. "Its colors, its currents, its depth. One of my best pieces, I think, but no one has ever offered to buy it. Several people say it's too depressing, the blues and the grays." With a shrug, she tilted back in the rocker and drank her tea. "Is it true Theresa's body was never found?" I asked. "Did Janine tell you that?" "No, Sissy did, the girl I was looking for." Miss Trent sighed. "The lake often keeps its dead. The water's deep, and dark. The bottom's rocky. Bodies get caught under ledges." Her voice trailed off. "Well, there's no sense dwelling on the morbid details. It was a sad end to an unhappy child's life." I tucked the robe around my feet and curled up as small as I could. I wanted to let go of Theresa, but I had more questions. "Sissy also told me Mom and Dulce were in the canoe with Theresa the day she drowned. She said it was their fault, that they murdered Theresa." Miss Trent set her teacup down with a tiny clink. "There was a lot of talk at the time. Theresa's parents were sure Dulce and Claire were involved. They even got the police to talk to your mother and aunt, but nothing came of it." She paused. "In case you're wondering, I think Theresa took the canoe out on a whim, and that Dulce and Claire had nothing to do with it." I reached down to pet Chauncey. Without raising my head, I asked, "Do people ever say they've seen Theresa's ghost?" "Of course not." Miss Trent laughed. "Did Sissy tell you that too?" "She scared my cousin Emma half to death. And me too." "I wonder who that child is," Miss Trent mused. Do you know her last name? She won't tell me. I don't even know where she lives. That's why I followed her today. I frowned. I want to find her house so Dulce can talk to her mother. Sissy's a bad influence on Emma. She ought to stay away from us. A clock struck 11 times like a miniature Big Ben, startling us both. I jumped up, stricken with guilt. I'd walked off 2 hours ago and left Emma sleeping. Dulce was probably furious. Are my clothes dry? I have to go home. Miss Trent disappeared into the laundry room and came back with my jeans and t-shirt and underwear still warm from the dryer. It's raining too hard to walk all the way back to Gold Cottage, she said as she handed them to me. Why don't you call Dulce? I'd love to see her. I'd drive you myself, but my poor Volvo's in the shop having yet another overhaul. As soon as I was dressed, I dialed Dulce's number. Just as I had feared, she was cross at me for leaving without a word to anyone, but she was also relieved I was safe. I'll come right away. Where are you? Sorry. I'll come right away. Where are you? At Miss Trent's. It's a yellow house on Sycamore Road. She has flowers everywhere. More even than Mom has. You can't miss it. What on earth are you doing there? I tried to follow Sissy home, but I couldn't keep up with her. I thought she must live in Miss Trent's house, so I knocked on the door and she invited me in. But she doesn't know Sissy. Sissy, 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 Dulce sighed into the phone. I wish you'd never met that girl. After she hung up, I sat down on the sofa. My aunt wasn't the only one who wished I'd never met Sissy. Chauncey nudged my knee with his nose and looked at me hopefully. I petted him, and Miss Trent laughed. He'll expect you to keep that up for hours, she said. I've never had a dog who needed more love than Mr. Chauncey. A few minutes later, Dulce's car pulled into the driveway next to the cottage. I glimpsed Emma in the back seat, her face pressed against the window. Despite all attempts to silence him, Chauncey ran to the door and barked loudly, just as he had when I had arrived. Miss Trent greeted Dulce. Ignore that silly dog, he never bites. Dulce carried Emma inside. Don't put me down, Emma begged. I'm scared of dogs. His name's Chauncey, I told Emma. He's an old sweetie pie, see? I petted Chauncey and he leaned against my legs, huffing happily. I don't like dogs, Emma said. In the meantime, Miss Trent was introducing herself to Dulce. I'm Kathy Trent, she said, but you'd have known me as Kathy Miller. My folks worked at Lakeview Cabins way back when the Abbotts owned the place. Dulce ran her fingers through her rain-dampened hair, but nothing she said did could tame it. I'm sorry, but it's been a long time, Miss Trent said. My memory's terrible. Dulce looked around the cottage, her eyes caught by the quilts. These are beautiful. Did you make them? Yes, I did, Miss Trent smiled. Allie tells me you're a painter. I'd love to see your work someday. Dulce shifted Emma so she could reach into her purse for a business card. I'm in the studio every day. A converted boathouse down on the shore. It's a lovely spot to work. That's the lake, Emma pointed at the blue and gray quilt. All deep and dark and scary. What a perspective child, Miss Trent said, clearly impressed. What's perspective mean? Emma asked. Perspective means you understand stuff, I told her. I do understand stuff, Emma agreed. Lots of stuff. We'd better go, Dulce said. Thanks for sheltering my errant niece. I hope she wasn't a nuisance. Allie's welcome any time, Miss Trent said. As are you and the perspective Emma. Perceptive Emma. As soon as we were in the car, Dulce let me have it. It was extremely irresponsible of you to go off and leave Emma alone. If you do anything like that again, I'll find someone else to take care of my daughter. Someone who's more mature than you are. I'm sorry, I mumbled, but Sissy... Stop blaming Sissy for everything, Dulce cut in. You're 13 years old. Act like it. Stung into silence, I slumped in the front seat and gazed out the rain-streaked window. Dulce stared straight ahead, her face closed, her hands tied on the wheel. Strapped in her child's seat in the back, Emma was